Hey there, I'm Leo with the UXR Institute. I'm here with LaKeisha Lovett, who is teaching our course on strategic UX research called Turning Insights into Influence. Thank you so much for joining us today, LaKeisha.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Super excited to chat.
So today we're just going to dig into the course so people get a real feel for what it's all going to be about. So I'd love to kick things off by asking you to tell us a little bit about your UX journey. From my little peep at LinkedIn, it looks like you've been doing this a while.
Yes, I have. It's been about 20 years, which is when I see that number is shocking to me, but it's the truth. So I've worked across the airline industry, HR technology, marine electronics. I know I'm missing something, logistics. I worked for UPS for a while. And so I've come at UX from both a research and a design perspective. I pretty much have done it all. But somewhere along the way, I realized what it really takes to be influential. And a lot of times I go in, do research, and sometimes it would land well, sometimes it wouldn't. And then it caused me to take a step back throughout my career to understand why. And a lot of times it was the relationships that I had forged ahead of doing the research. It was some projects, maybe I better understood what key information certain decision makers needed beforehand. And then there were some times where I would just jump in and do the research and not necessarily pay attention to what was important to my key stakeholders. And so I learned over time that those were sort of the things that made the difference between my research actually landing and influencing direction versus being filed and put away on a shelf.
Gotcha. Excellent. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your current role.
Sure. So currently, it's been about 6 months. I'm a user experience principal, transitioned from being a UX people manager at a very large retail company. And I'm focused on leading that company through its AI transformation work. I work in partnership with HR, technology, product, and engineering. But what's really important in this particular role is broader than how do we change experiences, technology with research. It's also defining how, in general, will accelerate their ways of working with AI. So it's building AI enabled experiences, also taking the learnings away from that and figuring out how do we accelerate the UX practice using AI tools.
Super cool. Let's dig into your course. So the title that you chose is Turning Insights into Influence. What inspired you to offer this course?
I'd say noticing times where my research would land and when it wouldn't. And also through the lens of being a people manager. So managing, coaching, and mentoring others. A lot of the questions I get are around like, how do I actually influence? How do I know if what I'm saying is really going to land? No one's listening to me. Or when I come back with insights, I get blank stares. I'm reading the room, but no one's really understanding me. And so through the last several years, I've had to do a lot of coaching on relationship building, putting the time up front to really pay attention to the project management piece of research. So making sure you're aligned with your stakeholders on the learning objectives, the outcomes of the research, timeline, also understanding another caveat here is also understanding the schedules within your organization. So there's a time in every organization where they're planning for the next year. So is your research landing ahead of that or after that? Because typically after that, the research that is done is in support of what's decided and planned for the year. So paying attention to those planning cadences. I'd also say understanding what is the business impact of your research? How is what you're working on tied to the business initiative if one's already been set in place?
Could you tell us about a highlight moment in your career where you felt your own research had particular influence?
Sure. It'll be an example similar to what you just mentioned from your own experience. It was one where I learned a lot, but also was able to influence. Again, working for this major retailer, I was working as a UX consultant embedded in a pricing strategy business unit for our B2B customers. And at the time, the pricing strategists were sort of just going out, experimenting with different pricing ideas to see if customers would spend more because they were saving more, and nothing was really landing. And so I was trying to get the team to wait until I come back with my research to understand how customers are perceiving the price, what's important to customers. Is there something we haven't even tried that would be better? But the director at the time said, hey, look, I am fine with you going out and doing this research. we have to show value sooner than later. And the best way to do that is to show that we're actually experimenting. So we can't just not do anything until you come back, but go out, get the research, and we'll fold it in. And so what I was able to do during my research is identify that it wasn't necessarily that the user experience of how the pricing was displayed or et cetera was a problem, or that the pricing wasn't valuable. It was that customers had no awareness of it. We actually weren't making it visible to them. So let's say you go into a store, you purchase something. We weren't even saying you've saved X amount of dollars from this pricing program. And so even though we knew behind the scenes that we're offering great pricing, it was virtually invisible to the customer. And so because it was invisible, their perception was that it didn't exist. And so as a result, instead of coming back and saying, okay, these are all the usability problems, I said, we have an awareness gap. We need marketing and we need to make the pricing visible across the journey. So we went from trying all these different pricing strategies to putting a true experience around the pricing to make it available. And then I'd say as a result, once we did that for about a month, we saw that sales for this particular target customer went up 300%. And I think it accounted to maybe $1 million+ in a month of them buying more than usual because they saw that they were saving. So that's like one of my favorite stories there for sure.
So it seems like you're able to have influence outside of the tightly defined UX research area.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd say a lot of companies I've worked at, I've been able to work more broadly end to end across the journey, or maybe even at the service level. Like this is a service. So yes, the technology is a piece, but sometimes my research has come back and shown that maybe the opportunity is in the process. Maybe it's in the training of the employees doing the work, or maybe it is in the marketing. And so to me, that's another way to be more influential is when you can position your research above a product or a piece of technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. It's pretending we're at a large grocery or retail store and they're giving away free samples to customers. So it's free sample time. From your course, what's one thing a researcher could start doing tomorrow that would increase their influence?
I would say I would go and seek out leaders. So maybe it's the product leader that you work more closely with, or an engineering leader or a business leader. Have a one on one with them and don't ask them, okay, what research do you think you need? Ask them what's keeping you awake at night. What are you worried about in terms of this project? And get really in their heads to understand how they're motivated, what their concerns are, and then figure out how your research can alleviate some of that stress and worry and provide insights that would help them. That would be my biggest recommendation. And I say product leader, engineering leader, business leader, it's the person that's responsible for the initiative, not your own leadership, not your product or engineering peers, but shoot a couple of levels ahead. That person will then see you in a different light because they understand that you're trying to connect with the overall value and connect your work there and drive value to the things that they're concerned about and the things that they're being held accountable for.
Wow. So in a way, what you're recommending is to take the UX research approach and apply it to UX research. In other words, figure out what is the pain your stakeholders are experiencing so that you can alleviate it.
Yes, exactly that. And I think we as researchers sometimes don't realize we have this hidden talent of being strong relators. And so don't underestimate your skill set of doing UX research. Like use that people relational skill and talent you have in building those relationships with the influential people around your project work.
And I think what's also so great about that suggestion is if you want to be doing more influential work, the first thing you have to do is raise your hand, right? And if nobody knows that you're interested in driving more important decisions, they can't help you.
Right.
So it's a form of maybe, I don't know, manifesting, if you want it to happen, you have to say it first.
You do. And I'd say that's how I've ended up in the project I'm working on now. And on other projects that have been broader than the technology is I articulate how I want to drive value. And oftentimes it's me going to my senior leader. So maybe not even my boss, but my boss's boss and saying, hey, this is the kind of work I'd like to be doing. Here's why I think I'm qualified to do it. Is there any place in the organization where I can get plugged in? And so that's typically how I end up getting positioned is exactly what you said. I asked for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my own experience, it can be a form of trial and error sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, last question. So the course itself works towards a deliverable at the end. Can you tell us what that is and why it will be helpful?
Yes, it's not a research deck. It's really an action plan. And so part of it is I want folks to take what they've learned, truly map out how are you going to build relationships? Who are you going to work with precisely? And go and set up those sessions. And it's not, oh, I'm going to have a coffee chat with this leader. It's, I'm going to go talk to the director of product management and talk about research priorities or their priorities over the next year or so. And how can I get plugged in? It's also figuring out what is your signature artifact. One of the things that helped me earlier on in my career at another company was they weren't doing journey mapping at all. And I have always felt like that's just a wonderful research artifact. And so that became my signature artifact for my brand within the company. And so part of that plan is figuring out your brand, your signature artifact, building those relationships. And then, like you mentioned earlier, outside of what research you're being asked to do, what other opportunities do you see in the company, and making a list of those and shopping that around with your leaders in other disciplines to see if you can get yourself positioned to maybe focus on some of those more influential opportunities that you've seen and get and garner some alignment. And so that's really what the end action plan is. It's really a way to take what you've learned and try it month by month so that it becomes natural to you and you're able to actually see the impact versus just sitting in the course, learning the things and then not knowing how to apply it. I like to end with an action plan.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's not just about theory, it's about giving you what you need to go out there and do it.
Right, right.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I might be a bit biased, but the course looks really awesome.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be teaching and sharing my years of experience with folks. There's this one quote where it talks about turning your pain into champagne. And so for me, being able to share some of the challenges to help others maybe not go through the same things that I have, or maybe do even better, is just so fulfilling. And so I'm super excited to share with everyone.
I think you just gave me the title to this video. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And again, I'm super excited about the course. For anybody out there interested, you can find details at uxrinstitute.com. Thanks all for watching, and thank you so much, LaKeisha.